Hey guys, and welcome back to a very special Warlords of Draenor video. So we have just got, via data mining, the models for four very main characters to the expansion. We have Durotan, we have Grommash Hellscream, and then we have the Prophet Velen, and finally, the guy we all know, Thrall. And yeah, first of all, the models are really, really amazing. I'm just going to go through them one by one and give you a little bit of a character bio on the guys. So first of all, we have Durotan. Now, on the model itself, I think this looks absolutely amazing, honestly. Now, it's got that really nice kind of Frostwolf pelt, or well, just wolf pelt thingy. Makes sense, you know, he's the leader of the Frostwolf clan, and overall, he just, honestly, he looks like kind of a badass. Look at his head, you know, and that, with that wolf skull, this is just one of those times when a character's, well, really just their character and who they are is just really well portrayed by their armor. And I suppose in many regards, they've done this with quite a few characters in Warcraft in general, and especially with these four models. Overall, an excellent job. In terms of just things as well, this is another example, of course, of the New Orc model, though I'd imagine that it's a more kind of, you know, heavily edited and special version, because it is a unique model. It's a very special character. You know, it's important. Now, who is Durotan, in case you don't know? Well, he's the father of Thrall, and he was a very honourable orc back in the day. Of course, I can't talk about this new Draenor timeline, but I can say that in the past, essentially, you know, he did stand by while a lot of terrible things happened, as perpetrated by the Horde in the First and Second Wars, but he did so kind of begrudgingly. He did try to orchestrate some just little resistances in a way against the you know, the Demon Blood and Gul'dan, but ultimately, you know, he sort of still towed the line in a way. But what actually happened is that, I think it was near the end of the Second War, he ended up siding with the orcs who had rebelled against Gul'dan and that kind of thing, and he sided with his good friend Ogrim Doomhammer. Now, Ogrim is actually going to be in the Warlords of Draenor expansion as well, but we are not really sure what role he's going to play. So yes, Durotan ended up siding with Ogrim, but then unfortunately, Durotan and his wife were murdered by, I think it was Blackhand the Destroyer's sons. Now, Blackhand's actually going to be the first raid boss, you know, main raid enemy of Warlords, so there's definitely a lot of interplay there. Still though, very interesting character, it's good to see him in the game, and let's move on to the next character model, which is Grommash Hellscream. I think this looks amazing, honestly. So, Grommash, he is a Mag'har orc. It's the clan that Garrosh is from. He's actually Garrosh's father. And in terms of his, you know, the model, the armor, that kind of thing, he just looks really, well, at least like he has the potential to be extremely angry, extremely brutal. He's not posed with a weapon or anything, but he still looks like he could just, you know, backhand you with those crazy-ass bracers that he has. And now, do bear in mind, I think these models have got perhaps of a more blank expression because they're just the default models. Obviously, these characters will be more expressive when they're actually in the game and conversing with players. But in general, his armor looks very cool. It looks very warrior-like and, you know, OMG, so savage. I think that's nice. I also like the way that it's not symmetrical. Often, I think, in Warcraft, they give in warriors and things like that just really symmetrical armor, and it doesn't really, at least in this case, fit with the idea of the Iron Horde, or maybe not just the Iron Horde, but it doesn't really fit with the kind of savage, bestial style that they're going for. So I'm glad they've done that. And of course, he's got a very interesting waist, that giant skull. Perhaps, you know, it nearly looks like a like one of those pit lord things from the Burning Legion, so perhaps a little bit of foreshadowing there. I forget the word, it's called dramatic something. Now, in terms of a character bio, well, basically he's the father of our good friend Garrosh Hellscream, and in Warlords of Draenor, he's going to be the main leader of the Iron Horde. Basically, it seems like Garrosh has went back, he's found his father, had a bit of a chat to him, told him about how, you know, weak the Horde would become over time, and perhaps this new Grommash has decided he's going to take a stand against that, form the Iron Horde, and do that kind of thing. Though in the past, he had a little bit of a different path. So what happened is that Gul'dan started sort of talking to the Burning Legion and getting all the demon stuff going on, and then there's the case of the Demon Blood, where the Pit Lord Manaroth basically said, right, you guys can drink some of my blood, you'll be extremely powerful, and obviously you'll be bound to our will. You'll be filled with what was called the Blood Haze, where they're just warriors, you know, that slicing, killing, nothing else but savagery. So they lost a part of it's definitely a process that lost a key part of orcs, as we know, in that really Thrall's not a savage sort of guy. Orcs do have compassion and things like that, and it was the Blood Haze that really lost that. Of course, they didn't really have much choice. But anyway, Grommash was the first guy to take up this demon blood. He was, he led horde armies, he did a lot of terrible things, and eventually he ended up meeting Thrall, all the way forward in time, I suppose, in Warcraft 3, when he was founding the Horde. And unfortunately for him, this was at a stage where they had been cleansed of the Blood Haze, but he ended up re-entering a pact with Manaroth, which was definitely a bad decision on his part. But eventually, him and Thrall killed the guy, and actually it was really Grom himself that killed Manaroth. He planted his axe in his skull, right through his breastplate. And yeah, it was quite the feat of heroism, but unfortunately that Grom died. Still though, very interesting that he's, well, it's cool to have him as a character. He's a pretty badass chap. We haven't seen him in Warcraft, and I think that modern storytelling from Blizzard could perhaps do very good and interesting things to the character. Alright, so next we have Velen, our favourite space goat. Look, I main a Draenor, so I think they're a really cool race. Now, Velen, in terms of the model itself, it's definitely similar to what we've seen in some concept art and some in-game things, but in terms of just fidelity, it's very much different. First of all, I'd say, look at his face. It's a lot more serious. This looks like a Velen that could, get angry and fight back. We know that Velen does fight back, and that definitely makes sense within this character. Also, his beard is, I've got to say, it's pretty epic. That is a hell of a beard. And also, the texturing, I don't think it's perfect, but overall, I like the aesthetic of the texturing of his beard. I love those just kind of like painted on shaders, the painted on shading and that kind of thing. I think it's really cool. He's got the crystals kind of embroidered throughout his armor, and overall he just is. It's this great mix of being kind of priestly, but also he's got this great air of authority that's communicated within his model, and he looks like he could seriously be a force to be reckoned with, as we know he will be. So that's very good. Now, in terms of a little bit of a short character bio for Velen. Well, he was the leader of, one of the leaders of the Eredar, and you're probably thinking, whoa, the Eredar are the evil demons we've been fighting. Well, actually, the Draenor and the Eredar are one and the same, in a way. Way back, I think it was 20,000 years ago, Sagaris, who was the leader of the Burning Legion, basically cut a deal with Kil'jaeden and Archimonde. Of course, Velen was the other guy. They were led by 3 guys, and Velen and his followers decided to flee the planet in a ship called Ushugan, which would later crash in Nagrand. But yeah, that's who Velen is. He led the Draenei away from the Burning Legion, and he's got a very strong relationship with the Naru and the Light, which is why I think he's a pretty cool character. And there's actually going to be 2 versions of the Prophet Velen when we get into Warlords of Draenor. There will be the current timeline one, as in the one that comes from our Azeroth, and then there will be the old Draenor timeline version of Velen. So yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, next we are going to have a little bit of a chat about Thrall. Good old Thrall. Well, one thing that's nice is that his green Jesus robe, I mean, it's still there, but at least it's not buttoned up anymore, and beneath that we can see the armor, I believe, of Ogrim Doomhammer. All reimagined, well-textured, and looking completely badass and cool. I really like that. And here's another thing. Well, you probably all know what a duster jacket is, right? There are very few times in which a duster can really be pulled off. And most of those times involve someone being an absolute through-and-through badass. Look what, that's what Thrall is doing. Doesn't he just look like a complete, just a bad motherfucker? That's what he looks like. To be honest, that's totally what I think Blizzard were going for. I really like how he's looking, as you can probably tell. I'm not too sure about his beads. I'd maybe drop the beads if I were him. I don't think it's much of a good fashion statement, but overall, I think he's looking really solid. It's got that right mix of where Thrall has been throughout Cataclysm, and while I don't agree with where they took him, at least as a character, it makes sense how they've brought him forward, and I think that's definitely fair enough. Another thing that I'd like to mention is his boots, actually. I love how just chunky his boots are. I don't know if that's just some weird thing about me, but I think it's really, really cool. And then also just in terms of detailing, and I think that this is something that'll be carried forward into Warlord's armor for players, but just look at his bracers, you can see the little fur bits inside, like the fur lining on them. The detail's just great, and his leather styled, I'm just going to call it a duster jacket, whatever. It looks pretty convincing, in my opinion. Now, also just moving on to the face, it's still Thrall's face. But I think, is his hair different? I don't know why, but facial hair just seems to be a bit more different. Maybe it's just the updated model kind of throwing me off. But he looks imposing, and in this pose, he looks kind of angry, actually. Which is pretty interesting to see from Thrall. This is hopefully a Thrall that is going to be going back to kicking ass and taking names. That's where I want the character to go. No more Green Jesus bullshit. And what I'm going to say is, Blizzard, you know, you've filled me with confidence so far with these models and what I've heard from the Warlord story. And I just hope that they follow through on that and give us an expansion with some really, really great lore that is Warcraft. Because I think Cataclysm and Mists maybe dialed in a little bit on the traditional Warcraft feel. I'm just so glad we're going back to that. Anyway, so I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you like the new models. Let me know what you think. And yeah, just stay tuned to the channel for all the latest Warlords of Draenor information. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.